Chosen one, you carry a kingdom-level clearance, and almost no one qualifies for the access that has been placed on your life. This is not about being above people. This is not about looking down on anyone. This is not about calling yourself special so you can escape responsibility. This is about being trusted with weight, discernment, pressure, silence, and sacred assignment that most people would not know how to carry without losing themselves. That is why your path has been strange. That is why certain doors closed without warning. That is why certain people could not remain close to you. That is why your spirit kept rejecting rooms your mind still wanted to enter. That is why you could smile on the outside while something deep inside you whispered, "This is not where I am supposed to stay." This message did not find you by accident. Something greater has been guiding you here, because your soul needed language for what your life has been proving in silence. You were not rejected because you were unworthy. You were hidden because access to you had to be guarded. You were not delayed because you were forgotten. You were being refined until your gift could survive elevation. And now, the pressure, the isolation, the strange sensitivity, the deep knowing, and the quiet authority inside you are beginning to make sense. This is clearance, and you must understand it before the next door opens. Stay with this message until the end, because by the time this is finished, you are going to understand what kingdom-level clearance really means. Why almost no one qualifies for it. Why certain people had to be removed from your life. How to recognize the signs that this access is already operating through you, and what you must protect so you do not lose the clarity, authority, and peace that heaven has been building inside you. Because if you misunderstand this season, you may call it loneliness when it is actually protection. You may call it delay when it is actually preparation. You may call it rejection when it is actually restricted access. And you may try to return to places that were never safe for the version of you that is being revealed now. Listen carefully. Your difference was not random. There have been signs around you for a long time, but because no one gave you language for them, you may have blamed yourself. You may have thought you were too sensitive. You may have thought you were dramatic. You may have thought something was wrong with you because old environments started feeling heavy. Old conversations started draining you, and old versions of yourself stopped fitting. But what if those things were not signs that you were falling apart? What if they were signs that your clearance was changing? There are seasons when your body begins to feel what your mind has not yet accepted. You walk into a room, and nothing obvious is wrong, but your chest feels heavy. You sit with certain people, and they are saying all the right words, but something inside you feels tired. You try to go back to old habits, old jokes, old conversations, old distractions, but they no longer land the same way. You used to be able to tolerate certain things because you had not yet been awakened to the cost of tolerating them. You used to stay in rooms that disrespected your peace because you thought endurance meant loyalty. You used to let people keep access to you because you believed love meant unlimited availability. But something shifted. Now your spirit does not let you pretend as easily. You can feel when a room is polluted by hidden motives. You can sense when a conversation is pulling you away from your center. You can tell when someone is trying to admire your light while quietly resenting the source of it. You can notice when an opportunity looks good on the surface but carries a strange disturbance underneath. That is not paranoia. That is discernment waking up. And discernment often feels uncomfortable before it feels empowering, because it forces you to admit what you used to ignore. It makes you see what you used to excuse. It makes you feel the weight of things other people can laugh off. It makes you unable to betray yourself in peace. That is why your life may feel heavier than the lives of people around you. Not because you are cursed, not because you are weak, not because you are behind, but because you are processing more than what is visible. You may have felt tired in a way sleep could not fully fix. Not ordinary tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from one long day. I mean the kind of tired that sits deep in the bones, as if your spirit has been carrying conversations you never had, warnings you could not explain, grief you did not know where to place, and pressure you could not name. You may have had emotional waves that came without a clear reason. Peace in the morning, sadness by afternoon, a sudden ache in your chest when nothing had happened, a quiet knowing that something was ending, even when everyone else acted like things were normal. You may have had dreams that felt more real than your waking life, dreams where you were searching for a door, dreams where you were walking through a house you had never seen but somehow recognized, dreams where people from your past appeared, not because you needed to return to them, but because your spirit was showing you what had finally been released. You may have kept seeing repeated numbers, hearing the same phrase, noticing the same message arrive through different people, different places, different moments, and you wondered if you were imagining it, but deep down, you knew something was trying to get your attention. The signs were not trying to entertain you, they were trying to prepare you. They were not there so you could feel mystical for a moment and then go back to the same old life. They were there because heaven was beginning to train your attention. Kingdom clearance begins with attention. Before a door opens, your senses sharpen. Before an assignment becomes clear, your tolerance changes. Before a new season arrives, old environments begin to feel too small. Before the right people come close, the wrong access begins to close. That is why you cannot keep calling your sensitivity a problem. Your sensitivity is not the enemy. Your sensitivity is a gatekeeper. It has been warning you when your mouth wanted to say yes, but your spirit knew the answer was no. It has been pulling you back from people who enjoyed your presence but did not honor your boundaries. It has been making you uncomfortable in places where your old self would have settled. And yes, that has cost you. It has cost you friendships. It has cost you comfort. It has cost you the version of belonging you once thought you needed. It has cost you the ability to blend in. It has cost you the illusion that everyone who smiles at you is safe for you. But every cost was not a loss. Some of it was clearance. There is a reason access to you has been restricted. Some people thought you became distant. Some thought you became difficult. Some thought you changed for no reason. Some may have accused you of acting different, becoming cold, becoming too serious, becoming unavailable. But they did not see what was happening beneath the surface. Your spirit began rejecting environments that were too small for your assignment. Your peace began refusing conversations that drained your authority. Your body began responding to places where your soul was no longer permitted to stay. That is not arrogance. That is clearance. You were not becoming difficult. You were becoming harder to misuse. And that is where many people misunderstand the chosen path. They think every separation is a tragedy. They think every closed door is punishment. They think every season of silence means nothing is happening. But in the kingdom, hidden does not mean forgotten. Quiet does not mean inactive. Separated does not mean abandoned. Sometimes separation is the only way to protect what is still forming. Think of Joseph. He had a dream before he had the character to carry the palace. He had a promise before he had the position. And between the dream and the throne, there was betrayal, accusation, delay, confinement, and silence. To the outside world, it looked like he was losing. But in the unseen realm, he was being prepared for access. Not just blessing, access. There is a difference. A blessing can make you feel relieved. Access gives you responsibility. A blessing can improve your life. Access can change the lives of people connected to you. A blessing can be received. Access must be stewarded. That is why not everyone who wants the palace can survive the pit. Not everyone who wants authority can endure misunderstanding. Not everyone who wants open doors can remain faithful when every visible door is closed. But you have been learning this in ways you did not even realize. Every time you chose silence when you could have defended yourself, something was being formed. Every time you forgave without reopening the door, something was being formed. Every time you walked away from what your flesh wanted because your spirit knew better, something was being formed. Every time you stayed clean in a season that gave you every excuse to become bitter, something was being formed. And heaven saw it. People may have missed it. People may have misread it. People may have judged the surface. But heaven saw the private obedience. Heaven saw the nights you wanted to quit and still kept your heart from becoming cruel. Heaven saw the moments you had every reason to retaliate and chose restraint. Heaven saw the tears you wiped away before anyone entered the room. And I hear this strongly for the one who has been carrying this quietly. You were not rejected because you were unworthy. You were hidden because access to you had to be guarded. That sentence is going to unlock something in you if you let it. Because some of the pain you are still carrying comes from believing people left because you were not enough. But what if some people left because they could not honor what you were becoming? What if some doors closed because walking through them would have trapped you in a smaller version of your destiny? What if some relationships became uncomfortable because your spirit was no longer allowed to make agreements with what was draining your life? You thought the isolation meant you were losing people. But what if you were gaining protection? You thought the silence meant nothing was moving. But what if the silence was the testing room? You thought the pressure meant you were falling behind. But what if the pressure was the seal being pressed into your spirit? You thought you were being overlooked. But what if you were being covered? This is why certain people could not come with you. Not because you are called to hate them. Not because they have no value. Not because you are supposed to become hard, cold, or superior. But because not everyone is assigned to have access to the version of you that is now emerging. Some people were connected to your wounds, not your wholeness. Some people knew how to relate to the version of you that apologized for existing. But they do not know how to stand beside the version of you that carries peace without begging for permission. Some people loved your availability, but not your boundaries. Some people loved your gift, but not your growth. And when your clearance changes, your access changes. That means some conversations will no longer be available to you. Some environments will no longer be comfortable for you. Some invitations will look normal, but something inside you will say, not anymore. Some people will still have your compassion, but they will no longer have your closeness. You must learn the difference. Compassion does not always mean access. Forgiveness does not always mean return. Love does not always mean proximity. Peace does not always require explanation. There are people you can bless from a distance. There are doors you can close without hatred. There are chapters you can honor without rereading them. There are memories you can release without pretending they did not matter. This is maturity. This is stewardship. This is part of kingdom-level clearance. And this is where the next question begins to rise. If your spirit has been so sensitive, if your discernment has been sharpening, if your relationships have been reorganizing, if your mind has been trying to break free from fog, heaviness, and old patterns, then what exactly is being activated inside you? Because clearance is not only about who leaves your life, it is also about what wakes up within you. There is a hidden connection between clarity, attention, inner stillness, and the ability to recognize the voice of guidance when it comes. There is a state where your mind becomes less noisy, your spirit becomes easier to hear, and the scattered pieces of your life begin to arrange themselves with a strange precision. Later, I need to speak to you about what some have called the hidden frequency of clarity. I need to speak about why your mind may have felt foggy even when your spirit was awake. I need to speak about why the childlike part of you once felt more creative, more intuitive, more alive, and why so much of that became buried under pressure, survival, and noise. But before we go there, you need to understand the qualification test almost everyone fails. Because the real question is not whether you have been given access. The real question is whether you can carry it without corrupting it. The real question is whether you can be misunderstood without becoming bitter, whether you can be delayed without forcing the door, whether you can be gifted without turning your gift into a performance, whether you can be elevated without losing humility. That is why almost no one qualifies. Not because heaven is cruel, not because the kingdom is trying to exclude people, but because access without preparation can destroy the very person asking for it. So, if your path has been narrow, if your circle has become smaller, if your spirit has become more sensitive, if your tolerance for false peace has disappeared, do not rush to call it loss. You may be standing at the edge of a door that only opens after the hidden place has finished its work. And if that is true, then everything you thought was random has been part of the preparation, the silence, the separation, the strange signs, the closed doors, the pressure, the deep knowing, the ache for something more. None of it was wasted. But now, you must learn why the clearance was given, what it requires from you, and what kind of person can walk through the next door without losing the purity that made the door open in the first place. You must learn why the clearance was given, what it requires from you, and what kind of person can walk through the next door without losing the purity that made the door open in the first place. Because the clearance was never just about being chosen. It was about being trusted. And trust is tested in places where applause cannot reach you. Most people want access, but they do not want the examination that comes before it. They want the open door, but not the private correction. They want the authority, but not the surrender. They want the assignment, but not the restraint. They want the blessing, but not the burden of carrying it cleanly. That is why almost no one qualifies. Not because they are unloved, not because they are worthless, not because heaven is looking for perfect people, but because sacred access can destroy an unprepared vessel. A person can receive a gift and use it to control. A person can receive influence and use it to feed the ego. A person can receive visibility and forget humility. A person can receive favor and start treating people as if they are beneath them. That is why preparation takes so long, not to punish you, but to protect you from becoming someone your younger self would not recognize. You were not just waiting for the door. You were being shaped for what is behind it. The first hidden test is this. Can you be misunderstood without becoming bitter? That test has followed you for years. People misread your silence. People assumed your motives. People took one small part of your story and built an entire opinion around it. Some judged your distance without knowing how much pain it took for you to finally protect your peace. Some called you cold because you stopped bleeding in public. Some called you prideful because you stopped shrinking to make them comfortable. And you wanted to explain. You wanted to send the long message. You wanted to prove your heart. You wanted to make them understand that you were not trying to hurt anyone. You were just trying to survive what had been hurting you. But there comes a point where explanation becomes another form of bondage. There comes a point where defending yourself keeps you tied to the very court that never had the authority to judge you. So heaven began teaching you silence. Not passive silence, not fearful silence, not silence that comes from having nothing to say, but sacred silence. The kind of silence that says, I know who I am, even when they do not. The kind of silence that says, I do not need to bleed again just to prove the wound was real. The kind of silence that says, my peace is more valuable than winning an argument with someone committed to misunderstanding me. If you can be misunderstood and still keep your heart clean, you are passing a test that most people fail. The second hidden test is this. Can you be delayed without forcing the door? This one is painful because delay touches the place where faith and fear wrestle. You know something is coming. You can sense it. You can feel that your life is not supposed to stay where it is. But the visible evidence does not always move as fast as the inner knowing. So the temptation comes. You feel tempted to force the conversation, force the opportunity, force the relationship, force the timing, force the recognition, force the result. You feel tempted to help heaven because heaven seems slow. But forced doors often lead to rooms your spirit was never cleared to enter. That is why some things did not work even when you tried hard. It was not always failure. Sometimes it was mercy. Sometimes the delay was keeping you from an immature yes. Sometimes the closed door was keeping you from a beautiful trap. Sometimes the silence was not denial, but timing. David was anointed long before he sat on the throne. Joseph dreamed of elevation long before he stood in the palace. Moses carried a deliverer identity long before he understood how to lead without relying on his own strength. Esther was positioned before she was revealed. There is a pattern. The promise often arrives before the permission. The calling often awakens before the capacity. The vision often speaks before the structure is ready to hold it. That is why you cannot judge your life only by what has opened. Some of the most important work has been happening in what stayed closed. The third hidden test is this: can you be gifted without turning your gift into a performance? This is where many people lose the purity of their assignment. They discover they can help people, move people, inspire people, sense things, speak things, build things, create things, and suddenly the gift becomes their identity. Then the gift that was meant to serve becomes something they use to be admired. But chosen one, your gift is not a stage. Your gift is a responsibility. Your discernment is not for superiority, it is for protection. Your sensitivity is not for drama, it is for alignment. Your voice is not for applause, it is for truth. Your influence is not for ego, it is for service. Your light is not for performance, it is for guidance. This is why you had to be hidden. If you had been seen too early, you may have confused attention with approval from heaven. If you had been celebrated too early, you may have built your identity around people's reactions. If you had been elevated too early, you may have carried the door with the wrong motive. So heaven let you learn who you were without the crowd. Heaven let you become strong without applause. Heaven let you become clear without constant validation. Because the one who needs to be seen before they obey is not ready for kingdom-level clearance. The fourth hidden test is this: can you be elevated without losing humility? This is the test that comes after the pain starts making sense, after the doors begin opening, after the right people begin noticing, after the provision begins moving, after the influence begins increasing. This is when the heart is revealed again. Because pain can humble a person, but promotion reveals whether humility was real. If you had to suffer to stay kind, will you remain kind when things get easier? If you had to pray when you had nothing, will you still listen when you have options? If you had to be patient in the wilderness, will you still move with reverence when the door opens? If you had to trust when you were hidden, will you still trust when people finally see you? That is the question. And if you are honest, part of you may be afraid of the answer. You may fear the next door because you know it will require a version of you that cannot keep living by old patterns. You may fear visibility because you have seen what attention does to people. You may fear success because you do not want to become arrogant, disconnected, exposed, or trapped under expectations you cannot carry. You may be asking inside, what if I get there and fail? What if I receive what I prayed for and cannot steward it? What if people see me and realize I am not as strong as they thought? What if the pressure becomes too much? What if the blessing changes me? Listen to this carefully. That fear is not automatically weakness. Sometimes that fear is wisdom. A reckless person feels no concern about carrying power because they do not respect the weight of it. A shallow person wants access without asking what it will cost their character. But the fact that you feel the weight means something in you understands that this is not a game. Healthy fear can become reverence. Reverence can become discipline. Discipline can become stewardship. So do not shame yourself because the next level scares you. Just do not let fear become the ruler of your obedience. You are allowed to grow without apologizing for the growth. You are allowed to become less available to what drains you. You are allowed to protect what is being built inside you. You are allowed to outgrow the version of yourself that needed everyone to understand. You are allowed to move differently when your assignment requires it. You are allowed to let your peace become more important than your image. And you do not owe anyone an apology for becoming who you were always intended to be. This is where you need to apply what I call the access audit. Do not make it complicated. Do not turn it into a ritual. You have to perform perfectly. Let it happen inside you, right now, as you listen. Imagine your life as a sacred house with many rooms. At the center of that house is the room where your peace lives, where your calling breathes, where your discernment speaks, where your deepest yes is protected. Not everyone belongs in that room. Not every voice belongs there. Not every memory belongs there. Not every fear belongs there. Now, in your mind, look at who and what still has access to that inner room. Some people may only belong at the outer gate. You can love them, bless them, and remain kind, but they do not get to walk into the private chambers of your spirit. Some conversations may need to stay outside completely, because every time you let them in, they leave confusion behind. Some habits may look harmless, but they keep stealing the clarity you are praying to receive. Some memories may keep knocking, asking to be treated like prophecies, when they are only evidence of what you survived. Ask inwardly, without panic, what has full access to me that should only have limited access? Then ask, what has limited access to me that should have no access at all? And then ask, what has been kept outside that actually belongs closer to my obedience? Because sometimes the problem is not only that the wrong things got too close, sometimes the right things have been kept too far away. You kept discipline outside because comfort felt safer. You kept truth outside because denial felt easier. You kept rest outside because urgency made you feel important. You kept healthy love outside because old wounds taught you to distrust anything gentle. Let the audit be honest, not harsh. Honest. Your spirit already knows what drains you. Your body already knows where peace disappears. Your mind already knows which patterns keep stealing the future from you. You do not need another dramatic sign. You need the courage to honor what has already been shown. Some access must be reduced. Some access must be removed. Some access must be restored. This is how you protect clearance. Because if you keep giving sacred access to unsacred patterns, you will keep feeling exhausted in a season that was meant to strengthen you. If you keep letting every voice enter your inner room, you will not be able to hear the voice that actually matters. If you keep treating guilt as guidance, you will keep betraying your peace to satisfy people who benefit from your confusion. The next tool is what I call the silence test. And this may be one of the hardest tests for you because you have a deep desire to be understood. You do not want people to carry false stories about you. You do not want your kindness to be mistaken for weakness. You do not want your boundaries to be mistaken for hatred. You do not want your growth to be mistaken for pride. But there are moments when explaining yourself is not wisdom. It is leakage. It leaks energy. It leaks focus. It leaks dignity. It leaks authority. It gives access to people who only came to cross-examine what they were never assigned to carry. The silence test is simple, but it is not easy. Before you respond, ask your spirit, is this a bridge or a courtroom? A bridge leads to understanding. A courtroom only wants a verdict. If it is a bridge, speak with peace. If it is a courtroom, keep your authority. You do not have to place your sacred assignment on trial before people who have already decided what they want to believe. Not every accusation deserves an answer. Not every misunderstanding requires a defense. Not every exit needs an explanation. Not every person who asks for access is asking with clean hands. There are times when silence is not avoidance. Silence is obedience. There are times when silence is not weakness. Silence is protection. There are times when silence is not fear. Silence is authority under control. And this is where the false version of strength must die. The old version of you may have believed strength meant making everyone understand. The old version of you may have believed closure required a conversation. The old version of you may have believed peace could only come after your side was heard. But the new version of you is learning something deeper. Sometimes peace comes when you stop arguing with people who profit from your reaction. Sometimes closure comes when you accept that their version of the story is not your prison. Sometimes strength comes when you let heaven defend what you no longer have the energy to explain. This is not about being silent forever. It is about discerning when speech is service and when speech is self-betrayal. Because your mouth is a gate. Your attention is a gate. Your agreement is a gate. Your emotional reaction is a gate. And if you are not careful, people who could not enter your life through love will try to enter through conflict. They will provoke what they cannot access. They will irritate what they cannot control. They will misunderstand you loudly just to see if you will abandon your peace to correct them. Do not hand them the key. If a sentence needs to seal this inside you, let it be this: I will not abandon my assignment to defend my image. Let that move through you. I will not abandon my assignment to defend my image. Because the next level may not require you to speak louder. It may require you to stop speaking where your words are being wasted. And now you are ready to understand the deeper truth. Kingdom-level clearance is not comfort. It is consequence. It is not given so you can feel important. It is not given so you can prove your enemies wrong. It is not given so you can finally stand above people who once dismissed you. It is not given so you can build a life of spiritual pride and call it confidence. Clearance is given because something needs to be protected through you. Something needs to be built through you. Something needs to be healed through you. Something needs to be carried through you. You are not being cleared for ego. You are being cleared for stewardship. You are not being cleared for revenge. You are being cleared for restoration. You are not being cleared for applause. You are being cleared for assignment. And I hear this like a weight pressing gently against the heart. I did not clear you for comfort. I cleared you for consequence. That is why your training has been so deep. Because the kind of access coming to you cannot be carried by the version of you that needed constant approval. It cannot be carried by the version of you that answered every accusation. It cannot be carried by the version of you that allowed guilt to open doors wisdom had already closed. It cannot be carried by the version of you that confused being needed with being loved. That version had to be healed. That version had to be corrected. That version had to be released. Not because it was bad, but because it was built for survival. And what is coming now requires more than survival. It requires stewardship. This is why you felt the old life getting tight around you. This is why your spirit stopped finding rest in places that used to feel familiar. This is why your appetite changed. This is why shallow conversations started feeling unbearable. This is why your tolerance for chaos decreased. This is why your desire for truth became stronger than your desire to belong. Your clearance changed. And when clearance changes, appetite changes. When clearance changes, access changes. When clearance changes, responsibility changes. When clearance changes, the cost of disobedience becomes harder to ignore. There are things you used to get away with that now disturb your peace immediately. There are conversations you used to entertain that now leave you feeling spiritually unclean. There are choices you used to make casually that now feel heavy before you even make them. That is not condemnation, that is refinement. You are being trained to respond faster to alignment. You are being trained to recognize the difference between an open door and an assigned door. You are being trained to recognize the difference between attention and confirmation. You are being trained to recognize the difference between being wanted and being respected. You are being trained to recognize the difference between emotional excitement and spiritual peace. This is not a small thing. This is kingdom-level responsibility. So the question is no longer, why did they leave? The question is, what did their absence protect? The question is no longer, why did the door close? The question is, what would that room have cost me? The question is no longer, why am I so different? The question is, what am I being trusted to carry? The question is no longer, why is the path so narrow? The question is, what kind of access requires this kind of preparation? And when you begin asking better questions, your whole story starts changing shape. The rejection becomes a gate. The delay becomes a classroom. The silence becomes a sanctuary. The pressure becomes a seal. The loneliness becomes a covering. The sensitivity becomes a compass. The hidden years become proof that nothing was wasted. Now you are standing at the edge of something sacred. And the next step is not to rush. It is not to panic. It is not to force the timing. It is not to run back to old access because the new responsibility feels heavy. The next step is to steward what opens, because the real test of clearance is not what you can enter. It is who you become after the door opens. Can you remain kind when you are no longer desperate? Can you remain humble when people begin to notice? Can you remain clean when opportunity increases? Can you remain discerning when the room gets louder? Can you remain obedient when comfort becomes available? That is the part that matters now, because what is coming is not just about receiving more. It is about becoming trustworthy with more. And once you understand that, the next part of your life will not be driven by panic. It will be guided by stewardship. You will stop begging for access to rooms that cannot recognize you. You will stop grieving doors that were protecting you by closing. You will stop calling yourself behind just because your preparation took place underground. You will begin to move differently, quietly, clearly, firmly, and with a peace that does not need to announce itself. Because the clearance was never meant to make you loud. It was meant to make you aligned. And alignment is not something you announce. It is something you steward. This is where many people miss the point. They feel the shift. They sense the door. They know something new is forming. They can feel the old life loosening its grip. And because the pressure has been so long, they want to run the moment they see even a small opening. But chosen one, when kingdom-level clearance begins to operate in your life, rushing is dangerous. Panic is dangerous. Ego is dangerous. Old hunger is dangerous. Because what you do with small access determines whether you can be trusted with greater access. That is the stewardship rule. If you are faithful with the whisper, you can be trusted with the instruction. If you are faithful with the instruction, you can be trusted with the door. If you are faithful with the door, you can be trusted with the room. If you are faithful with the room, you can be trusted with what the room was built to release through you. This is why the next season is not only about receiving more, it is about becoming clean enough to carry more. Guard your motives. Before you step into the next room, ask yourself, do I want this because it is assigned to me, or because it will finally make people respect me? Do I want this because it is aligned, or because I am tired of feeling invisible? Do I want this because it serves the calling, or because I want proof that the people who doubted me were wrong? This matters, because a beautiful door can still become dangerous if you walk through it with wounded motives. There is nothing wrong with wanting relief. There is nothing wrong with wanting recognition after years of being overlooked. There is nothing wrong with wanting your life to finally reflect the work you have done in private. But if revenge becomes the fuel, the blessing becomes contaminated. If ego becomes the driver, the assignment becomes performance. If proving people wrong becomes the goal, you may reach the room and still remain bound to the people who hurt you. Do not let your breakthrough become another conversation with your past. Let it become obedience. Guard your mouth. There are words that open doors, and there are words that leak authority. There are words that heal, and there are words that feed the old story. There are words that carry life, and there are words that keep you tied to rooms you were already released from. In this season, you cannot speak casually over what is sacred. You cannot keep saying you are confused when heaven has already given you enough light for the next step. You cannot keep calling yourself broken when you are being rebuilt. You cannot keep saying nothing ever works for you when the pattern of your life is clearly changing. You cannot keep rehearsing the old identity and then wonder why the new one feels far away. Your mouth is not just expressing what you feel. Your mouth is training what you expect. So speak carefully, not artificially, not religiously, not with fake positivity, but with reverence. Say what is true without worshipping the wound. Say what hurts without making pain your permanent name. Say what you need without begging. Say no without hatred. Say yes without fear. Say less when silence protects the assignment. Guard your attention. Your attention is one of the most valuable gates you have. What you keep looking at becomes larger inside you. What you keep replaying becomes heavier inside you. What you keep studying begins to shape your inner atmosphere. That is why some of you feel spiritually exhausted, not because you are doing too little, but because your attention is being divided by too many unworthy things. You wake up and give your first attention to noise. You carry someone else's opinion for hours. You replay a conversation that already stole enough from you. You check for signs from people who already showed you who they are. You feed your mind with fear, comparison, urgency, and old grief. Then wonder why your spirit feels crowded. Clearance requires focus, not obsession. Focus. It means your inner room cannot be open to everything. It means your peace cannot be available to every headline, every accusation, every memory, every fear, every person who wants a reaction from you. It means you must become more intentional about what you let speak inside you. Guard your energy. Energy is not only about being tired or rested. Energy is about agreement. Every time you agree with fear, you spend energy. Every time you agree with guilt, you spend energy. Every time you agree with a false identity, you spend energy. Every time you let someone pull you into a battle that has nothing to do with your assignment, you spend energy you were supposed to use for your becoming. This is why boundaries are not punishment. Boundaries are stewardship. Boundaries are how you keep the sacred from being handled casually. Boundaries are how you teach your nervous system that peace is not a luxury. Boundaries are how you stop allowing access to people, patterns, and pressures that keep pulling you below the level you have been trained to walk in. Guard your obedience when no one sees. This may be the most important one, because public obedience can be admired, but hidden obedience is where clearance is preserved. What you do when nobody praises you matters. What you choose when nobody would know matters. What you refuse when you could get away with it matters. What you surrender when your flesh still wants it matters. What you keep building when the result is not visible matters. You are not being watched so you can be punished. You are being formed so you can be trusted. And the one who can be trusted in the hidden place will not be destroyed by the visible place. This is why the next season will reorganize your life in ways you must not fear. For those entering this season, 3 areas may begin shifting at the same time: your relationships, your purpose, your provision. And if you do not understand what is happening, you may panic when the movement begins. You may try to hold what is leaving. You may question what is rising. You may feel both grief and hope in the same breath. But when clearance changes, these 3 areas often change together because they are connected. Your relationships will reorganize first because access has to be corrected before assignment can expand. Some people who had unlimited access to you will not be able to reach you the same way anymore. Not because you hate them, not because you are trying to punish them, not because you want to become distant and untouchable, but because the old level of access was built around an old version of you. There were people who knew how to connect with your pain, but not your peace. People who knew how to receive your help, but not honor your boundaries. People who knew how to enjoy your presence, but not respect your growth. People who felt safe around your insecurity, but uncomfortable around your clarity. When your clearance changes, those dynamics cannot remain the same. You may feel guilty at first. You may wonder if you are being selfish. You may feel sadness when the conversations become shorter, when the energy changes, when certain names no longer stir the same longing, when your heart no longer chases what once had power over you. Do not rush to fix what heaven is gently separating. Do not grab expired access just because silence feels unfamiliar. Do not confuse grief with a command to go back. Some grief is simply your heart adjusting to freedom. What you must trust is this: as wrong access closes, right connection becomes possible. Not crowded connection, not performative connection, not people who only come because they want what you carry, but people who recognize your language without forcing you to translate your soul every time you speak. There are people assigned to the version of you that tells the truth. There are people assigned to the version of you that walks in peace. There are people assigned to the version of you that no longer apologizes for discernment. There are people assigned to the version of you that has stopped confusing chaos with chemistry. Let them find you in alignment. Your purpose will reorganize next because old distractions lose power when assignment becomes clearer. You may notice that certain ambitions no longer excite you. Certain goals that once looked impressive now feel strangely empty. Certain plans you used to chase now feel too small, even if they still look good to other people. You may not have the full map yet, but you can feel the old map losing authority. This can be unsettling, because purpose rarely arrives as a complete blueprint. More often, it begins as a holy dissatisfaction, a quiet sense that you cannot keep spending your life on what drains the deepest part of you. A persistent pull towards something more honest, a growing refusal to waste your gift in places that only reward your exhaustion. Do not confuse that discomfort with failure. Sometimes discomfort is the sound of purpose waking up. Your assignment may not be loud at first. It may not look impressive at first. It may begin with one honest conversation, one small act of obedience, one decision to stop betraying your energy, one return to the thing you abandoned because survival took over. But small does not mean insignificant. A seed is small, but it knows how to become a tree. A key is small, but it can open an entire house. A whisper is small, but if it comes from the right source, it can redirect a life. So do not despise the small beginning. What you must not do is chase a door that requires you to become false in order to enter it. Do not chase platforms that require you to perform a version of yourself that your spirit does not recognize. Do not chase relationships that require you to silence your discernment. Do not chase opportunities that make your body feel heavy before your mind can explain why. The assigned door may require courage, but it will not require self-betrayal. Remember that. The assigned door may stretch you, but it will not corrupt you. Your provision will reorganize as well because resources follow assignment, not ego. This does not mean everything becomes easy overnight. It does not mean you will never have to plan, work, learn, adjust, or make wise decisions. But it does mean that as you come into alignment, you may begin to see provision differently. Provision is not only money. Provision is timing. Provision is information. Provision is the right person saying the right thing at the right moment. Provision is energy returning after a long season of numbness. Provision is a door opening that you could not have forced. Provision is the courage to leave what looked secure but was slowly draining your spirit. Provision is the wisdom to recognize an opportunity before fear talks you out of it. For those entering this season, resources may begin appearing around responsibility, not around fantasy, not around ego, not around proving people wrong, around responsibility. As you become more honest with your assignment, certain things may begin to line up. Not always dramatically, sometimes quietly. A conversation, a skill, an idea, a connection, a chance to build, a chance to serve, a chance to repair what was neglected, a chance to step into the next level with humility instead of panic. Do not worship the provision, follow the alignment, because the provision is not the source, it is the support. And this brings us back to something I told you earlier. There is a hidden connection between clarity, attention, inner stillness, and the ability to recognize guidance when it comes. Some of you have been spiritually awake, but mentally foggy, deeply sensitive, but scattered, full of inner knowing, but unable to focus long enough to act on what you know. You can feel the assignment, but your mind feels crowded. You can sense the door, but your thoughts feel heavy. You can hear something calling you forward, but survival, stress, disappointment, and noise have made it difficult to stay clear. And that matters, because clearance without clarity can become confusion. A calling without focus can become frustration. Sensitivity without inner stillness can become exhaustion. This is why I want to speak gently about the hidden frequency of clarity. There is a state of the mind that many people only touch in rare moments. Moments when ideas arrive easily, moments when intuition feels sharp, moments when time seems to slow down, moments when your inner world becomes quiet enough for the right answer to rise without force. Some people call it flow. Some connect it to deep creativity. Some connect it to prayerful clarity. Some researchers connect it to patterns in the brain, including gamma activity, the kind associated with heightened awareness, integration, learning, and moments of insight. You may remember having something like this when you were younger. That childlike quickness, that strange creativity, that ability to feel life as if it was speaking, that sense that ideas, signs, and possibilities came toward you naturally. Then life happened, pressure happened, survival happened, disappointment happened, constant noise happened. You learned to overthink, you learned to brace, you learned to scan for danger, you learned to carry stress in your mind until clarity became harder to access. And little by little, the signal that once felt natural began to feel buried. This is not something to shame yourself for. It is something to understand, because if your mind has been living in survival for years, it may not instantly return to clarity just because your spirit wants it to. Sometimes, the mind needs help settling into a different rhythm. Sometimes your inner world needs a tool that helps it remember what quiet focus feels like. Sometimes you need something simple enough to use consistently, especially when your life is already heavy. That is why I want to mention something I have placed below for those who feel led to explore it. It is called The Genius Song. It is a 7-minute audio track designed to be listened to with headphones, not while driving, not while doing anything that requires your attention, but in a safe moment when you can simply receive the sound and let your mind settle. The idea behind it is brain entrainment, using sound to help guide the brain toward patterns associated with clarity, focus, and that heightened state many people describe as flow. I want to be very clear. This is not a replacement for faith. It is not a replacement for discipline. It is not a replacement for healing, wise counsel, rest, responsibility, or obedience. It is not a magic button that does your life for you. But for the chosen one who has felt mentally foggy while spiritually awake, for the one who remembers feeling sharper, more creative, more intuitive, more alive, and wants a simple tool to support that return to clarity, this may be worth exploring. The creator, Dr. Robert Lake, presents it as a simple 7-minute audio experience built around this gamma activation concept. The regular price is $49, but the special price connected to this message is $39. And with it, there are 4 bonuses included: a Genius Child audio track, a classic book connected to the ideas behind the secret, a guided visualization, and an infographic with 5 habits for building a more aligned future. There is also a money-back guarantee, which matters because you should never feel pressured into something that does not resonate with your spirit or your situation. If you explore it and do not feel it is right for you, you are protected by that guarantee. And please hear this carefully. There are many fake pages and imitation products using the name Genius Song. Some are just ordinary audio files with no real brain entrainment technology embedded into them. So if you decide to explore it, do not search randomly and do not trust every page that uses the name. The only link I can point you to is the one in the description and pinned comment connected to this message. Again, do not approach it with panic. Do not approach it as a desperate purchase. Approach it with discernment. Investigate it only if your spirit feels steady about it. Because the tool is not the clearance. The tool is not the calling. The tool is not the source. At most, it is a support for the clarity you need while you steward what has already been placed inside you. And after the mind becomes quieter, the real work is still this. Will you obey what you hear? Will you protect what has been entrusted? Will you walk cleanly through doors you once prayed for? Will you stay humble when the pressure lifts? Will you remain gentle when you no longer have to prove your strength? Will you keep your heart pure when the room finally opens? That is where the sacred work continues. So now, without needing to move, without needing to perform anything outwardly, let your attention enter a simple inner picture. Imagine there is a gate in front of you, not a gate made to keep you away from your life, but a gate made to protect what is sacred from being entered too early. You are not standing there as a beggar. You are not standing there trying to break it open. You are not pounding on it. You are not pleading with it. You are simply standing before it with the quiet knowing that what is assigned cannot be forced, but it also cannot be stolen. In your imagination, see every old label falling from you before that gate. The label that said, rejected. The label that said, too late. The label that said, too sensitive. The label that said, difficult. The label that said, forgotten. The label that said, unqualified. Let them fall without argument. You do not have to fight the old names. You only have to stop answering to them. Now imagine there is a seal over your spirit. Not a seal of pride, not a seal of superiority, a seal of stewardship, a seal that says, this one has been through fire and did not let the fire make them cruel. This one has been hidden and did not let the hidden place make them faithless. This one has been misunderstood and did not let misunderstanding corrupt their heart. This one has been delayed and did not force the wrong door. This one has been emptied and still chose to remain available for purpose. Let that truth settle inside you. You do not have to become loud to be authorized. You do not have to become hard to be protected. You do not have to become perfect to be trusted. You have to become aligned. Now picture the gate recognizing the seal, not because you screamed, not because you begged, not because you proved yourself to people, but because what is real in you is recognized by what is assigned to you. The gate does not open because of performance. It opens because of alignment. And as it opens, do not rush through it in your mind. Let the opening itself teach you. Let it remind you that some doors only open after you stop trying to become someone else to deserve them. Let it remind you that what is for you will still require courage, but it will not require self-betrayal. Let it remind you that the next room is not asking for the old version of you. It is asking for the stewarded version, the quiet version, the clear version, the truthful version, the version that can carry blessing without worshipping it, the version that can carry influence without abusing it, the version that can carry love without losing boundaries, the version that can carry provision without forgetting the source, the version that can carry authority without needing to dominate. This is who you are becoming, a spiritual warrior, not because you fight everyone, but because you can hold your ground without collapsing, a truth carrier, not because you expose people for entertainment, but because you cannot keep living in what is false, a bridge, not because you belong everywhere, but because you have learned how to connect what pain tried to separate, a builder, not because you need recognition, but because something in you is assigned to create what outlasts you, an intercessor, not because you carry everyone's burden until you disappear, but because you know how to stand in the gap without surrendering your own soul. This is the maturity of kingdom-level clearance. It is not dramatic. It is deep. It is not noisy. It is steady. It is not about being untouchable. It is about being unavailable to what is no longer allowed to shape you. So let this be spoken over the part of you that has been tired from trying to understand the whole path at once. You do not need the whole map today. You need the next obedient step. You do not need every person to understand you today. You need to stop abandoning yourself for people who benefit from your confusion. You do not need to force the door today. You need to become the kind of person who can enter it without losing peace. You do not need to prove your clearance today. You need to steward it. And I hear the Father saying, I did not hide you because I was ashamed of you. I hid you because what I placed inside you needed covering. I did not delay you because I forgot you. I delayed what would have harmed you before you were ready. I did not separate you because you were unloved. I separated you because your access had to be guarded. Now walk cleanly, walk quietly, walk with courage, walk with the humility that keeps the door from becoming an idol. Chosen one, your story is not random. The isolation was not random. The signs were not random. The closed doors were not random. The strange sensitivity was not random. The pressure was not random. The repeated endings were not random. The deep ache for more was not random. Something was being formed. Something was being guarded. Something was being prepared. Something was being sealed. And now you are beginning to understand. You were not merely surviving the wilderness. You were being trained for access. You were not merely losing people. You were being taught the difference between love and access. You were not merely waiting. You were being refined for timing. You were not merely misunderstood. You were being freed from the need to be explained. You were not merely sensitive. You were being sharpened in discernment. You were not merely hidden. You were being covered. And now, as you move forward, do not go back to old agreements just because the new responsibility feels unfamiliar. Do not reduce your standards because loneliness whispers that any access is better than no access. Do not betray your peace because guilt tries to sound like love. Do not confuse urgency with instruction. Do not confuse attention with assignment. Do not confuse open doors with ordained doors. Walk slowly enough to hear. Walk humbly enough to be corrected. Walk boldly enough to obey. Walk quietly enough to remain clean. The clearance you carry is not a costume. It is not a title. It is not something to use against others. It is not something to turn into pride. It is not a reason to look down on anyone. It is a call to carry responsibility with a heart that still knows how to kneel inside. You are not above people. You are entrusted for people. You are not chosen so you can escape service. You are chosen so your life can become a place where truth, healing, courage, and holy order can move through the earth. That is why the enemy tried to make you bitter. That is why rejection tried to make you close your heart. That is why delay tried to make you force the wrong door. That is why confusion tried to make you stop trusting your discernment. That is why exhaustion tried to make you settle. Because if your heart stayed clean, your access would remain intact. And somehow, after everything, you are still here. Still listening. Still sensitive. Still hoping. Still carrying something you cannot fully explain. That means the sacred thing in you did not die. It may have been buried, but it did not die. It may have been hidden, but it did not die. It may have been tested, but it did not die. It may have been misunderstood, but it did not die. It may have been delayed, but it did not die. And now, it is rising with more maturity than before. If this message confirmed what your spirit has been feeling, when it is safe and when you are able, write these words in the comments. I will steward the clearance. Not because a comment proves anything, but because sometimes your mouth needs to agree with the identity your fear has been resisting. I will steward the clearance. I will not worship the door. I will not chase the wrong access. I will not abandon my assignment to defend my image. I will not confuse loneliness with rejection. I will not confuse delay with denial. I will not confuse sensitivity with weakness. I will not confuse blessing with permission to become careless. I will walk clean. I will walk clear. I will walk humble. I will walk aligned. And if you are still here, receive this final blessing over your next season. May every false door lose its power over you. May every wrong voice become quieter. May every old chain of guilt break from your decisions. May your discernment sharpen without making your heart cold. May your boundaries strengthen without making your spirit hard. May your peace become too expensive to trade for approval. May your calling become clearer than your fear. May your provision find the path of your obedience. May the right relationships recognize you without requiring you to become false. May the hidden place release its harvest in the right time. May the door that is assigned to you open without you having to betray your soul to enter it. And may you never forget this. No one qualifies for this except the version of you that has been formed in the fire, humbled in the hidden place, softened through grief, strengthened through silence, and aligned through surrender. That version is not coming someday. That version is rising now. So do not go back. Do not shrink. Do not panic. Do not perform. Do not let old access pull you out of new alignment. Carry what has been placed on you with reverence. Protect what has been built in you with wisdom. And when the next door opens, walk through it without noise, without pride, without fear, and without apology. Because you were not cleared for comfort. You were cleared for consequence. And now, chosen one, it is time to steward the clearance.